Hey there, business builders. Ever found yourself struggling to find the right balance between your work and personal life? Well, today we're diving into the all-important subject of life-work balance. We'll share personal experiences, including the highs and lows of being business owners, their impacts on our personal lives, and what we can do about it. So join us for this first episode in our series about planning for a more balanced life. Well, welcome to the Business Builders Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Brenton Gallant.
And I'm Ron Tomlin.
And Ron, today is our 51st episode. We're into a new era.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a result, we're going to take a little bit of a deviation from the norm and start talking about something that's more about the person than it is about the business. And we'll relate that. We'll relate that in. So we're talking about life-work balance.
Yeah.
Now, why do we call it life-work balance? Why don't we talk about work-life balance like everybody else?
Because I think when we say work-life balance, that seems to be emphasizing the fact that work is the most important thing.
Absolutely right. And it's not appropriate. Work is a part of life. It isn't the whole life.
Correct. And look, the way this has come about, Ron and I, obviously, we've told you before, if you're a regular listener, or if you're just coming in for the first time, we sit down before we do a podcast and we have different discussions. And the last few episodes, Ron, we've been talking about the fact that you've been going away on holidays. And I think it was an episode or two ago, you were saying that that's something that you made sure you were doing right from the get-go, as far back as you can possibly remember, to take care of your family.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't always the case. And what's interesting is that I got to a point where I had to make some decisions. And we'll talk about that as part of this series.
Yeah.
But yeah, the interesting thing is that now it's one of the priorities. And that is an important thing to consider, is when we talk about work-life balance, it's about prioritization as much as anything.
Yeah, and I think it's really good that you've said that, because one of the things that we want to get across with this series, because this series, again, will be all about life-work balance, is the fact that we're not experts, but we've been learning. And again, a big part of the reason this has come up is because I have never really had, and I'll be the first to admit this, a good life-work balance. I've always been about work. So started an advertising agency when I was 32, and for 15 years been involved with running that on a hands-on perspective. In fact, I think it was almost 16 years. Now my business partner's running that, which is fantastic. But during that whole period of time, I basically never took a holiday because I felt like if I did, the whole thing might fall apart. I felt like I was responsible. And I know a lot of business owners who are like this. You get to this point where you feel like you're there to feed the team, to make sure that you're putting food on the table of the people you employ. And so I always felt that great weight of responsibility. And for most of the time that I was running Nucleus, I never had a significant other in my life or a partner. So I really only had myself to answer for. So I never really took holidays.
So, and this is all about sacrifice. If you want something to go well in one aspect of your life, you have to sacrifice other aspects.
Yep.
And and this is the essence of the life-work balance, finding that balance between those sacrifices that you make. You know, it's interesting you say about a person who runs a business, owns a business. One of the very first members I got into my tech group came to me, and I said, why do you want to be a part of a group of CEOs? And he said, very simple. I want my life back. He said, I'm the only person in the business that doesn't take a holiday, and I want to take a holiday. And I'm very happy to say that it took a long time, but we got him to the point where he was taking at least a month a year.
A month a year? That's pretty decent.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, because a lot of people would say a month a year is the sort of minimum you want to take.
100%.
Yeah, but we got him up to that point, considering he was doing nothing. I think nowadays he's not in my group anymore, but he's probably taking a lot more time than that off. But the point is, that can be a perspective that people have. To be successful, I have to work myself into the ground. And it then begs the question, what is success? And we're going to talk about that as one of the topics that we're going to look at in terms of this life-work balance thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. What is success? But we'll get to that in a minute. You talk about the fact that one of your tech members had that whole problem.
No, he came to the group with that problem.
He came to the group with that problem.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who are business owners or CEOs or leaders in general have that problem, that they will sacrifice themselves because they bear that weight of responsibility that you were talking about before. And as a result, they're the ones who suffer.
Yeah. And that manifests in so many ways. I would say, yeah, and I'm sure if we delved into it, that a lot of your members would have that issue of work-life balance, particularly those people who start businesses because they feel it's their responsibility, and it does become a big ball and chain and an anchor for some people. And I found that I would be sleeping 4, 5, 6 hours a night and thinking that was luxury because I slept not a lot, trying to make sure that I was always active and getting things done. But 2 reasons why, from my point of view, this topic came up and became really important. I've had a partner for the last 5 or 6 months, and I have noticed how my actions and my sleep patterns and my work affects that person. And she's not able to sleep if I come back and at a later point in the night because she's a light sleeper. So if I come into the bedroom and 3 o'clock in the morning or something, that's it. Her night is done. And I've realized, I can't do that anymore. But
the interesting thing is, and this has become very overt for you, the truth of the matter is, as an example, if you're not getting enough sleep, it's affecting your business.
Yes.
It's affecting the way you interact with other people.
Yes.
You probably haven't noticed it. That's the difference.
Well, you do notice it. You realize you're caught in it, but you're caught in a trap. So my work pattern would be during the morning, I'd get up often late, like I'd get up like 9, 10 o'clock rather than 6, 7 o'clock, which she does. Now I do. But I would get up late and then I would spend sometimes up until 2 o'clock either talking to people, calling people, going through my list of people that I need to interact with and do that in a casual way. I might walk down to the coffee shop and get a slow start to the morning. But then come 1 or 2 o'clock, I would start working, I would hit my straps and I'd be working till 2 in the morning. And I was quite comfortable with that.
And you get into a flow. It might be a fantastic thing as long as you compensate that with a decent amount of sleep as well. And we'll talk about that.
Yep. But there's this train of thought that kind of indicates that you've got to find the beats and the groove for your style of working. Yeah. So I always thought my style of working was just to work like that. And I would be most productive between maybe 4 p.m. in the afternoon and 2 a.m. in the morning. That was where I really got stuff done.
And it is for different people. I'm the opposite. You're what we call an owl. I'm an early bird. I'm a lark.
Yeah.
I love to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Get stuff done. But I've learned that in doing that, I now exercise at that time of the day rather than do what I used to do, which is study or get stuck having to work.
Yep. So the way we came to this topic, just in summarizing all of that, is basically by having the episodes we've been having and my life changing a bit with a partner coming along and then listening to you talking about your holidays and other things and thinking, gee, that's really something that I think I should be doing and going away and doing things. And I've started to realize it's really important. So it's become a topic between the two of us. But I guess what you're pointing out there is one person's way of working is different to another person's way of working. So if we're talking about this master topic of life-work balance, that's got to look different for everybody, right?
Absolutely. And different for everyone at different stages of their life. The accepted wisdom about life-work balance is that it has to be in complete equilibrium. That's just unattainable, I think. At different stages in your life, there are going to be projects or there are going to be situations where work will take the predominant position. And as long as there's a balancing at another stage, you can't. There are times, for instance, the birth of a child, where the home life will take dominance. And that's completely appropriate. But again, the different stages require different mixtures or components so that you get that overall work-life balance or life-work balance. And I think a lot of it comes down to what are we talking about in terms of goals, achievements, And I think one of the problems that people have is they don't think for themselves about what success is for me.
Mm. That's interesting. For a start, I'll just comment and say I really take my hat off to people who have kids, as you mentioned, because I see people, I was reading up about a CEO the other day who was saying that they used to work, well, actually a founder of a business, and they were saying they operated on 4 hours sleep a night. They took care of their son, then they worked, got up, did it all again, got their son off to school, single mum in this particular instance, and doing that for years to make sure that the business progresses and it's doing well, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't have kids, so when I see people doing that, I think, wow, that's amazing. Would I be able to do what I'm doing now if I had kids in my life? And the answer is you'll find a way, like you were saying, but it's by planning and being very specific or very intentional about the way you do things. So planning then, it seems, and of course we're spitballing here, if you want to find a life-work balance, you got to plan for it.
Yes. And I think that the planning, like we talked about with strategic planning, is having that overall, what do I want my life to be? And a way that some people will think about this, and I tend to think about it, is at the end of your life, if you look back, will you say that was a life well lived?
That's great.
So what is a life well lived? And is it about material success? And look, if we allow other people to define what success means, one, it usually means when I get, I will be happy. When I get this, the bigger house or the bigger car or the better job. And a lot of people, as they move through their life, the problem is once I get this, well, I want something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a never-ending treadmill. Instead of saying this is about the journey as much as the destination, in fact, more than the destination, because it's about how you live your life. Under those circumstances, the material goods, material assets, they're going to provide you with a bit of satisfaction for a short amount of time. But, using the analogy of the car, you get your first car and it's intensely satisfying. You say, well, yeah, I like this car. I like this Mini, but what I really want is a Mustang. You get the Mustang, and of course, there's always a better car sitting around the corner. Get the Mustang, and what I really want is a Bentley. You get the Bentley, and then what you really want is an Aston Martin. Get the Aston Martin, and what you really want is a Bugatti, because there's always something more. And if your satisfaction is relying purely on material things, you're always going to be dissatisfied.
So that brings that whole creating a life well lived thing. I really like that, I got to say, because if we want to say that, and remember we're talking about work-life balance, if work-life balance is creating a life well lived, that means we really need to understand for ourselves what that means. So for some people, it might be what you're talking about. It might be that whole drive to get more, because that might be the thing that floats their boat. I personally, I'm going to give a judgment call here, think that's a very two-dimensional person who's got caught up in things that maybe are not necessarily that important, but that's just my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to just say one thing. If you're listening today, and I think we got to consider this as well, Ron, for those people who are listening, I think we got to all ask ourselves that question almost right now. Do I have a good life-work balance? I think it's the 7 habits of highly successful people we've spoken about in the past. That starts with this idea that you should write your own epitaph. What would people say about me when I passed away? Would I be happy with that? So I would ask everyone who's listening right now, if you were gone tomorrow, would you regret anything? Would you think, oh, I just spent so much time poorly over here where I should have been spending time on this? That then comes to that question of a life well lived, because if we said that to you and you weren't self-analyzing yourself, you might go, well, a life well lived is exactly what Ron just said. It's about accumulating more stuff. It's about having more power. It's about having more
prestige.
All of that. But the fact is, and we're getting a bit morbid here, Ron, but there's all those famous stories about people's deathbed last sayings. And very little of it is about their accumulations, but it seems to be lessons from the deathbed seem to be things about, I should have spent more time doing this. I wish I had spent more time with the people I love. This is important where that's not. So that to me, a life well lived, if you want to really ask yourself, is life-work balance kind of able to be answered in being able to say, I've had a life well lived? It's really thinking about if you were ready to kiss these mortal coils goodbye and you had your family gathered around you, providing you do have your family gathered around you when you're ready to go, would you sit there in your last days, last breaths thinking that was a life well lived?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That comes down to the whole meaning of life question.
Oh, well, it does.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, now we're on a business builders podcast. Why is this important to people who want to build businesses? Why is this important to our business builders? Why, this seems like a topic way off mark.
Well, actually, I think it's the perfect topic. You know it is. And for those of you who are listening, this is kind of like a rhetorical question, because if you know anything about the Business Builders podcast, we believe that if you're going to build a business, you've got to work on yourself first. The builder, the person building the business, has to be fit, has to be able to function effectively. And so if we don't have a life-work balance, at some point something's going to break. And I think it was you the other day who was talking to me about sleep. So, we're going to have a whole heap of topics over the next few months. And one of those topics will be looking at sleep, right? You were saying that if you operate on 6 hours sleep a night, there's these diminishing returns that happen. And I think I'll let you tell this story and I'll get back to the whole life well lived thing in a minute. But you told a story about a snake.
Oh, the concept of an allostatic load.
Allostatic load. Now, there's something I need to look up. What the heck does that mean, Ron?
Okay, well, here's an explanation of an allostatic load. And I have to accredit this to one of our tech speakers, and I have to admit, right at the moment, I forget his name. But if you could imagine, you're walking down a path on a hike, and you see a snake cross your path. What immediately happens? Well, physiologically, what happens is this huge pump of adrenaline gets injected into your bloodstream. Your blood pressure goes skyrocketing. Your pulse goes through the roof. And that is the amygdala telling the rest of the body, right, we've got three choices here. We can freeze, we can flight, as in run away, or we can fight. And the body is getting ready for one of those three. Okay? Now, if the snake doesn't attack you and just slithers across your path, fantastic. You keep walking, and what happens physiologically is your blood pressure starts to diminish, your pulse rate starts to diminish, that adrenaline starts to diffuse into your body. Fantastic. You're going back to the set point that happened before, or you're approaching that set point in all those indicators that happened before you saw the snake. But let's suppose you turn a corner within a couple of steps and there's another snake. What happens is, once again, the whole process repeats itself, but it goes a little bit higher. And as you come back down, the set point gets set a little bit higher. Now, let's suppose you keep walking on this path and that continues for the next 10, 15 minutes, that you continually see a snake. What your body will do is stay at a heightened set point because it's anticipating there's going to be danger around the next corner. The analogy is, this is what happens to a lot of people in their work life. They get into a state where, look, I can quite frankly operate, not me, but this person can operate on 4 hours sleep a night.
Yep.
They're continually heightened.
Yes.
They're always on. And we all know people like that.
It's been me.
Yeah, well, they're always on. Fantastic. And it doesn't take much to get you into work mode because basically you're always in work mode. And it's hard to settle down because you're always in work mode. You're always ready to tackle the next task or accomplish the next thing. The downside is this. Number one, it's great for tasky things. It means you're always on. But it means your brain is not thinking reflectively. Okay, so the capacity to make important decisions is significantly diminished, and it takes you about twice as long to make important decisions or to do anything vaguely analytical. Number one. Number two, it decreases your life by about 10 to 20 years. It might not be important to you.
Worse than smoke.
Yeah, but that's the point. It has such stress or creates such stress on your life is that it has a significant impact on your longevity. Number three, if you decide, okay, what I need to do is get off this treadmill and go on a holiday because I haven't had one for 3 years, your body suddenly says, are you kidding me? And most people can relate to this. Most people who are workaholics and people who are always on will relate to this. You just go on a holiday and within the first 2 or 3 days, you get sick.
Yeah.
And I know I'm preaching to the converted here. You get sick, and so half of your holiday is spent in bed.
That's right.
And then you get back to work, and the whole process starts all over.
And you think, why should I ever take a holiday again?
Because it's just too stressful.
So the point of that story, though, is that at some point a crash is going to come. You can operate. I remember there was someone I was working with years back, and they always said if they were operating at a 130% for maybe 3 months, 1 month, we can deal with that. We've got one busy month. If it's 2 months, if it's 3 months, they would, in their business, employ more people. If it was a sustained period of time where they were working at 130%, and now that is possible, of course, to work at 130% because we got 7-8 hours in a day. So you just start working 12, 13, 14 hours a day and you're working at 130%. Sometimes it's okay to do that. If it's all the time, you're going to somewhere destroy yourself. Now, business owners, business builders, back to why your original question, why is this such an important topic for us? Well, often when the key person falls over, the business either falls over or goes through a really difficult period. So why should business builders be operating at all 4 cylinders, all 6 cylinders, all 8 cylinders, depending on the engine model? Why should they be firing? Why should they be working like a well-oiled machine? Because if they're not, the business won't. So we must work on ourselves.
There's this myth that if I don't work really hard and push myself beyond my own limits, then I won't be successful and build that business. But
that's right.
If you are doing that at your own detriment and you are critical to that business, then you're building a business simply so it can fall over. Doesn't make any sense.
So you got to find the work-life balance or the life-work balance, because life is the important thing. Because at the end of the day, when your days are almost up, it's not your business you're going to be thinking about. It's going to be the relationships you've got. It's going to be how you've contributed. I was listening to someone the other day, and I can't remember who, but they were talking about the fact that they work hard because they want to contribute. They feel that unless they're giving back, they're not fulfilling their purpose. Now, that's them, and that's great. But when they get to the end of their days, they'll be able to sit there and go, I contributed to my community. That's the thing for them that's really driving them. So what's driving you? What's driving you, our listener? What's driving you, Ron? What's driving me? That's what we got to find out. So there's a number of topics we'll go through in the next few weeks. One of them, we talked about planning, could be a whole episode like you do, 10-year plans with your tech guys. Is that correct?
That's right. Getting them to think about, what do I want my life to look like in 10 years' time? Usually people find it a little bit difficult to go beyond that. But unless you're thinking it with that sort of time frame, you're not dreaming enough.
Yeah.
You're not being expansive enough.
And that covers all aspects. That covers
personal life.
Yeah.
The life as a professional and the life as a business person.
In that book I was talking about, The 7 Habits, they talk about doing that as well and carrying around your own little personal business plan in your pocket for your life, your business plan for your life, whatever they called that. I can't remember what it was. I know friends like we had Tanya Conti on the podcast a while ago. She does a plan with her husband every year because she's told me in the past, and they treat their family a little bit like a business in the sense that there's all sorts of different things they consider, like life-work balance, creating experiences, all the things beyond work.
And some people might balk at the idea of treating your life like a business and treating your personal life. But really what we're talking about is bringing some of the disciplines that work for business, like planning, into your life because it can help develop that sense of balance in your life.
And one of the other things that I think is really important that we should be thinking about as well, there's some things, there's that saying, you don't know what you don't know. And when we get sick, when something goes wrong with us, when you're young, you're kind of like, nothing could destroy me. Well, I was like that anyway. And then I remember I got sick in my 30s and it was a vitamin imbalance. Actually, it ended up being, I thought I was dying, ended up being a copper overdose. And so I had to dose myself up with magnesium because a copper overdose means the magnesium basically gets sucked out of your body somehow. What I went through then made me actually realize, vitamins do matter. I got to make sure I get a balanced diet. Otherwise, I'm going to crash and burn like I did. And it took me a year to get over that.
And the other thing I'd like to emphasize here is that, unfortunately, unless people are starting to consider this, what usually happens, and you and I have seen it a number of times, is at the point at which people start thinking about this is when there's been a major life event for them, like a stroke, a heart attack,
yikes,
some type of major disease, and then they are forced into thinking about this, and there's limited scope for their planning at that point.
And I'll add to that, there's also nervous breakdown, there's burnout. And the thing that's really struck me in recent years is the psychological effects that things can have on you because it becomes cumulative. And if you're in your 20s or your 30s, it won't affect you that much. Maybe it does, depends on your life experience. But for me, it was in my 40s that I started to, and I'm still in my 40s.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Not for much longer. But anyway, I realized that different ways of thinking, different things have had different impacts on me. And I have to then go out and do things about that. There's practices that you put in place that help you to heal. And I'm not being all esoteric and flower childy here, but there's real things that you put in place that help you to progress as a person and help you to find that life-work balance. But you don't know about those things until the detrimental effects start to become so loud that you can't not listen. So I'm going to suggest that on this series that we're going to do, that some of the things we'll look at things like planning, we'll look at things like considering all areas of your life, relationships, our personal well-being, what we need in our bodies. So being aware of what we need to do for ourselves, what I need to do for me, all of these things we need to consider, because when you can understand all the things that we need to consider to create a life worth living, then you can actually plan for them. But if you don't know that you need to think about a certain thing like psychological well-being or health,
relationships.
I
mean, let's be fair. There's a certain badge of honor that business people sometimes project, and that's my business, my work life is the most important thing, and everything else suffers. And it's okay because I'm building a business here. Not thinking about what will make me happy, what will make me feel fulfilled in my life. And relationships are often the things that suffer. And there's plenty of research that we'll bring into our discussions to talk about what actually makes people happy.
Yep. And so that's what you can expect from the Business Builders podcast over the next several episodes. And I think it's going to be a good journey. I think I'll learn a lot because, again, part of the reason I wanted to talk about this topic with you is because I want to learn these things myself, because now there's a partner in my life that I need to consider. And therefore, by considering how to actually take care of that person, I need to actually look at how do I take care of myself.
Absolutely right.
So I want to leave you with a question. And we hinted at this earlier, but if you are listening to us today, honestly ask yourself, do I have a good life-work balance? And the question that's really difficult is, if you were on your deathbed today, would you look back at your life and say, I've had a life worth living? If the answer to either of those questions is my life-work balance could improve, or there's things I would need to do to actually be able to say that I've had a life worth living, then I think the series that we're about to do is something that you will get something out of.
And if you don't, what are the consequences of that? Not only in terms of your own life, but in terms of your business. If you're thinking, well, thanks very much, Brenton and Ron. Nice, interesting topic, but I think I'll tune out. what are the consequences for the individual of not thinking, and for the business of not thinking about this stuff?
Well, they will become cumulative, and from experience, they will bite you at some point. So there's no doubt that they'll bite you at some point if you don't actually spend time planning and thinking about how to create a life worth living, how to find life-work balance. The question really is, when is it going to happen?
And we will be exploring that next time.
Thank you for listening. This series really is about us investing in ourselves so that we're well equipped to work on our businesses.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay. So
right.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
See you in a couple of weeks.